In this video 1-6, we will be multiplying and dividing real numbers. By the end of the video and work timing class, you should be able to say, I can multiply and divide real numbers. We're first going to be multiplying real numbers. The product of two real numbers with the same signs is positive. So if I'm looking at two groups of 3, they're both positive, I get 6. A positive times a positive is a positive. And so if they're both positive, your answer is positive. Now if I had -2 times -3, I'm looking essentially at two groups of 3 again. However, we have one other way of looking at it is we have the opposite of -3, two groups, which gives you a positive. So the opposite of negatives are positive, and that's really why our answer is positive there. The opposite of negatives gives you a positive 6 for your answer. So once again, when your signs are the same, both negatives, your answer is positive. So same sign with a product is positive. The product of two real numbers with different signs, so a product with different signs is now going to be negative. So for example, 2 times -3, if you're looking at essentially what this is the opposite of positives, you're dealing with negatives. Or -2 times 3, opposite of positives again, is going to give you a negative. So when one real number is positive, the other real number is negative, and you're looking for the product, you will have a negative answer. Ignore those number lines there. Dividing real numbers. The quotient of two real numbers with the same sign is positive. So similar as the previous slide, quotient with the same sign, we're looking at positive as well. So if I was doing 20 divided by 5, I'm going to have 4. And the reason why these rules essentially work the same for dividing is because dividing is the opposite of multiplication. And so if I was doing a -20 divided by a -5, I'm also going to get that positive 4. So when they're the same, we have that positive quotient. Same with the quotient when they're different signs, and like just previous slide, same as the previous slide with a product, is we're going to have a negative answer. And so I will write a couple down. We'll just use the same integers here. -20 divided by 5, that's going to give you a -4. And 20 divided by a -5 is going to give you a -4. So signs are different, you're going to have a negative quotient. The quotient of 0 and any non-zero real number is always going to give you 0. The quotient of any real number and 0 is undefined. So just remember, any number, let's say we do the quotient of 0 and any real number that's non-zero, like 8, you will always get 0. So 0 divided any non-zero real number will always give you 0. However, the quotient of any real number, such as 8, and 0 is undefined. You're not going to divide some value by nothing. You would get error in your calculator. Inverse property of multiplication states for every non-zero real number a, there is a multiplicative inverse 1 over a such that a times 1 over a is the same as 1. So when you multiply any real number such as 3 times 1 over 3, I'm going to get 1. A real number -4 times -1 over 4, I'm going to get 1. And so what we're looking here at is reciprocals. If I have a over b, the reciprocal is b over a. And the reciprocal of a non-zero real number of the form a over b is b over a. And whenever we multiply those reciprocals, we get 1. And that is what this property is saying. Whenever you multiply reciprocals, you get 1. So For example, 2/3. The reciprocal of 2/3 is 3/2. And we'll use that when we are dividing rational numbers as well. So let's use our rules here for multiplying and dividing real numbers. For number 1, 9 times -7, you would get a -63, since we're looking basically at the opposite of positives, which gives us negatives. When the signs are different and you multiply, you're going to have that negative answer. 32 times half, well, half of 32 is giving you 16. Since they're both positive, your answer is positive. -1/2 times 5, 6, just multiply straight across. Your numerators, you get -5. Your denominators, you get 12. It's in lowest terms, and it's a negative because a negative times a positive is a negative. Now in number 4, we're raising -5, which is the base, to the exponent 2. Since the base is a negative, you're multiplying that base, -5, by itself twice. A negative times a negative, we know, gives us that positive value, so it's 25. Make sure you're not writing -25. That negative is inside parentheses, so that is the base. The opposite, for number 5, it's the opposite of the square root of 49. And then we know the square root of 49. What squared is 49? Is 7. So we're looking at the opposite of 7. Number 6 is plus or minus the square root of 4/9. And so with this one, we know that we can take the square root of 4 and the square root of 9 separately. Separate the numerator and the denominator, so we're left with plus or minus the square root of 4, which is 2, and the square root of 9, which is 3. So plus or minus 2/3. The elevation of a hot air balloon changes by -3,750 feet in 5 minutes after opening the parachute. What is the change in the hot air balloon's elevation each minute? So we're doing -3,750 divided by the 5 minutes to know how many feet per minute. So we do the division to find that quotient. A negative divided by a positive is going to give us a negative, and -3,750 divided by 5 gives you -750 feet per minute. And I wrote into the next problem here, so I'm going to erase this. What is the value? I'm going to just erase this from above. Sorry about that. What is the value of x over y when x is 1/2 and y is a -2/3? So essentially what we're doing here is 1/2, which is x, because it says x divided by y. So we have x, 1/2, divided by the y, which is -2/3. So a little review from dividing rational numbers. I have a little saying too sometimes I use. When it says divide, don't cry. Just flip and multiply. You flip the second rational number, you find the reciprocal. Once you find the reciprocal, so I'm going to flip that around. Once you find the reciprocal of the second rational number, it becomes a multiplication problem. Multiply the numerators, multiply the denominators. And remember, a positive divided by a negative is a negative, or we can look at a positive times a negative. It gives you that negative. In terms of that negative could be in front of the numerator, it could be in front of the denominator, it could be in front of the whole fraction. This is the same as this is the same as if it was in front like this. So it doesn't matter where that negative symbol is. Can you say, I can multiply and divide real numbers? Write a summary and reflection and be prepared with your questions in class.